Welcome back to JM Football. My name is Justin Penik. This is Dalton Feely. What we're going to be doing every 4 weeks is Dalton Feely is going to be coming up with a all-JM NFL team, kind of like an all-pro team. We're going to do that every 4 weeks. Dalton Feely makes the list. Dalton Feely's background is in like stats and like a little bit of evaluation. So a little bit of a preface. We're not watching every single NFL game. We're not watching every single player in the NFL, but there's enough resources out there and enough stats and advanced stats to come up with a good list to see who these best NFL players are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like we're able to see every single snap of every single game every single week, but what we do really well is like we do watch film, we do look up numbers, and we use both of our backgrounds and our information to create this great list.
Yeah. So Dalton Feely, we're going to start off with the position that everybody loves. It's the most valuable position in the game of football, quarterback.
I think it's a slam dunk going through week 4. It's Tua. It's the Dolphins legend as of right now anyway. Starting off 3-1. Now, I will preface that record doesn't really matter in terms of this. It's not about how your team's doing. This is not
QB wins.
Right. It's not an MVP race. This is just based on how this player is playing at their spot compared to the other players that play their same position. Tua, first in passing yards, 1,300 yards. First in yards per attempt at 9.6. Second in rating behind Brock Purdy at 114.4. EPA per play is second. Passing touchdowns, he's tied for second. Tua's done a really good job in this Mike McDaniel offense. If Tua can stay healthy, he legitimately has a shot to win MVP this year. My biggest question is, can he do it for over a 17-game stretch? Through 4 games, he's looked very, very good. He's looked very comfortable.
Yep.
Having guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and in the run game, you have Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane as running backs has been huge for Tua in this offense. And right now, I think guys we can consider going forward. Justin Herbert's an honorable mention. Josh Allen, Brock Purdy I think he's like 26 in attempts, which kind of scares me. Very efficient. Would like to see him maybe throw the ball a little bit more, but when you're winning games, that doesn't matter for him. Right now, Tua is the slam dunk choice at quarterback through week 4.
Yeah, I would say statistically, like Tua has got to be like all JM NFL team first selection.
Yeah,
has to be Tua right now just because of the stats and the numbers that he's putting up. Before I talk more about Tua, I just do want to talk about Herbert. I think Justin Herbert is putting on film and from a performance standpoint, from a quarterback standpoint, I think Herbert is doing the most right now. Because Tua, everybody's going to say, well, Tua this, Tua that. Tua has Hill, Tua has Waddle, Tua has Mike McDaniel, which you can't blame Tua for that. No. You can't blame quarterbacks for executing a very good system and executing a system with very good players. I will just say, like, Herbert is doing like jaw-dropping quarterback things. Not that Tua's not doing that. Tua is doing that, but Herbert, I would just put him on that list over. But stats-wise and just production and efficiency-wise, Tua takes the cake. And I want to say one more thing about Tua and this quarterback spot before we move on to running back. Everybody clowned Tua a couple years ago with Brian Flores and that revolving door at offensive coordinator too under Flores. Everybody clowned Tua for being a check down Charlie. You can't throw the ball down the field, yada, 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 yada. I don't care what receivers you got. I don't care what coaching coordinator you got. I don't care what system you're running. Tua is executing the system well and almost flawlessly. And yards per attempt first at 9.6 with the completion percentage at over 70%. Yeah. Usually you'll see the average depth of target guys have the high completion rate. Not the opposite. Not the guys with the high yards per attempt and high average at the target with the high completion rate. Oh, yeah, and a CPOE of plus 4.1 as well. So he's completing more passes than what he is, quote-unquote, expected to. So this is credit to Tua. I know, again, the asterisk of you got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle, but the fact that people clowned on him for not being able to throw the ball, what has he done since Mike McDaniel's coming to the door? He's thrown the ball. So credit to Tua.
Absolutely. And I mean, he did this at Bama. Like, he was able to throw the ball down the field at Bama. Yeah. It was shocking he hadn't done it that well at the NFL level. This year, we're finally seeing that, and that's a huge progression for Tua.
Dalton, let's move to running back.
If we're talking about slam dunks on this list, I think this is the easiest choice of them all. Like, this has got to be the easiest choice. It's Christian McCaffrey. It's CMC. Run CMC. Basically first in every rushing category. Rushing yards, first downs, yards per game, missed tackles for us, he's number 1, 10-plus yard runs, explosive runs, tied for first in rushing touchdowns. He's third in yards per attempt, so we're being efficient. And then he's a dual threat. Receiving yards, second out of all running backs. Receptions, tied for second. He's got a receiving touchdown. Rushing yards over expected, he's third. He's just
that's a big one for me.
Rushing it right now at the running back position. He is the focal point of that Niners offense. And when CMC is healthy, we mentioned it with Tua with health too, but CMC, he's had his injuries when he was with Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
When he is healthy, he is so dynamic. It is so fun to watch him both as a runner and as a receiver. Puts up 4 touchdowns versus Arizona, which was ridiculous. And I believe he's got 13 or 14 straight games with a touchdown now. Yeah. So he just finds ways to get into the end zone. He creates big plays, and that's just what the Niners do right now.
I would say out of this whole entire list and all the positions that we're going to talk about, I think C-Mac is the biggest slam dunk.
Yes. We're on the same page with that.
Of being first. I mean, you have honorable mentions. You have Raheem Mostert and you have Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson is just, dude, he's just so awesome in the way that he moves. Hope that really continues to be fun in Atlanta. Guy. But Christian McCaffrey, just in terms of all these stats compiled together, I think he is the clear number one. And also, so a shout out to Christian McCaffrey too, because I don't think San Fran fans are as sold on this offensive line as much as they have been in years past.
Yeah. I mean, especially that interior. There are huge question marks on that interior offensive line. Obviously, you still got Trent, which you might hear about him later. But, yeah, the Niners' offensive line has still played really well. Shot like a little bit of a surprise. Yeah. And CMC has benefited through that.
Yep. Wide receiver
going back to Miami. Tyreek Hill, number 1. Receiving touchdowns, we're tied for first. Yards per route run, which is a PFF stat, 3.92 yards, which if you don't know, electric. That's second in the NFL. Receiving yards, he's third. Receiving first downs, he's third. Yards per reception, he's fifth. For a guy that gets targeted as much as Tyreek Hill does, and especially, sometimes he goes deep as a vertical threat, but other times they use him in that short game too, middle of the field, crossing routes. Being fifth is ridiculous to me. Average depth of target is 14.1, which is high. Wide receiver rating when a QB targets him is 6th. Tua has such a huge benefit playing with a guy like Tyreek Hill. Yeah. He changes the face of an offense with how explosive he is, because when Tyreek gets the ball, he can house call at any single time. So explosive. He is a guy that will find the end zone at least 10 times this year, and he's the number 1 receiver because he's changed the face of that offense.
Not to get in too much of a rabbit hole, do you think he's better with Miami and with Mike McDaniel and Tua than he was with Kansas City and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes?
I think this is more of an opinionated thing, what I'm going to say. He seems like he has something to prove this year. He's saying, I'm going to get 2,000 yards this season. He really looks like he wants to get 2,000 yards and prove to the NFL that, he wasn't a product of Patrick Mahomes. He's Tyreek Hill. He is that dog for a reason. And right now, through the first 4 weeks, he's my number 1 wide receiver for a reason. Yeah. He's been that good. And to answer your question, I think this is the best he's played through a 4-game stretch to start the season. Yes, yeah. I would say that.
I think he's been more this is such a crazy sentence, but hear me out. Because I think Patrick Mahomes just elevates everything. Travis Kelce obviously elevates everything in Kansas City. I think Tyreek Hill has been more impactful for the Dolphins than he was for the Chiefs. I think he's elevated the whole offense.
Yeah.
Whereas you're seeing the Chiefs, they're still able to sustain. They won a Super Bowl last year without Tyreek Hill. Whereas Miami, it's like, I think if you take Tyreek Hill out, I think the offense goes from being number 1 to maybe being like an average looking unit, like maybe a top 10 still looking unit. Tyreek Hill, I think it's just elevated everybody in Miami, including Tua, like we've talked about before. But it's a 2-week streak. It's certainly a 2-week streak. Tell me about some of these other wide receivers. We have 3 here. 11 personnel we're running out of.
11 personnel. Oh, we should have said that. Number 2 and number 3. Number 2 is Justin Jefferson. Jay Jettas from Minnesota. Number 1 in receiving yards. Number 1 in receiving first downs. 2nd in yards after catch. Tied for 3rd in receptions. He's got 3 touchdowns, which is tied for 3rd out of all wide receivers. 7th in yards per reception, 8th in rating, 5th in yards per route run. Justin Jefferson, you don't even need the stats. He is he's an alpha receiver, just like Tyreek. There have been some alpha receivers that haven't played well through 4 weeks, but these 2 guys have lived up to who they are. Jefferson and Kirk have played pretty well through 4 weeks, but Jefferson elevates that offense too.
Oh yeah.
I think this is a great question to ask. Does Jefferson elevate the Vikings offense more so than Tyreek does to Miami?
Yeah, because I think that team just isn't as good.
Yeah, because my thought is I think you make a great point with Tyreek, but Jefferson, like, if you take Justin Jefferson out of that receiving game,
Yeah, I think the Vikings
it's Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne. Like,
the Dolphins' offense can still swim. No pun intended. They could still swim without Tyreek Hill. I think the Vikings' offense could tank without Justin Jefferson. So it's such a great point. Tell me about this third receiver. That's certainly if you were to poll us before the season, nobody and their mother would expect this guy to be here.
I wanted to give credit for this guy. First off, where's your necklace to celebrate him being on this list?
Yes. Jake took it.
Oh, thievery. Number 3, shockingly, Puka Nacua from the Rams, the rookie out of BYU. How about it? He leads the league in receptions at 39. Second in receiving yards with 501. 500 receiving yards through 4 weeks.
Let's look at his stat line. Yeah, 39 catches, like you said, 501 yards, one touchdown, 12.8 yards per reception, 52 targets. If that was Puka Nacua's stat line to end the season,
we're thrilled if you're a Rams fan.
You're like, yeah, this guy from BYU. Maybe that was a little bit of a bright future for us.
Dude,
this is through week 4.
This is through week 4. And listen, like, I think this Puka being on this list is very interesting because he's been around the performances of Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. Like, he's been around there. And I'm giving him the knowledge because he's been that impactful for that Rams offense, especially with an offense without Cooper Kupp. I'm very curious to see how Nacua performs with Cooper Kupp back.
Yeah.
That's going to be something of note.
Nacua's been lining up on the outside a decent amount. That's why I think they can coexist together.
They will. I think they will coexist. The target share is probably going to go down by a pretty big margin, but he's been very good. He's been efficient for what he does. He's not a guy that has like a huge ADOT. Like, he's not going to go down the field and stretch it out. He's a great possession receiver. And heck, when he gets the ball, he's not going to just be one tackle and he's done or one attempt. Like, he can get a little something after the catch.
Yeah. A successful, receiving success rate is something that a Pro Football Reference recently introduced. Mm-hmm. So let's define it. A successful reception gains at least 40% of the yards required on first down, 60% required on second down, 100% required on third or fourth down, 65.4% success catch rate for Puka Nacua. And for a guy, like you said, that's not going to get the average depth of target. Like, guys with high average depth of targets, they're going to have a very high suck percentage, as Dan Canovio likes to call it. But Puka is doing what he's got to do. He's moving the chains. Also just had a walk-off touchdown, unfortunately, against your Indianapolis Colts. Almost called them the Baltimore Colts. How do you like that?
Toxic times 2.
You mentioned some honorable mentions. You mentioned Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. I gave a lot of flack to Devontae Adams, just personally, like, in my head, doing that fantasy football prep, being like, I think this is the year that Devontae Adams kind of falls off with Jimmy G at quarterback. Now, he's still chucking along there in Las Vegas. Dalton, I want to keep moving. Tight end.
I think maybe outside of Puka Nacua being on this list, I think this might be the biggest shock. The second rookie on this list, Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta out of Iowa, man. Listen, TJ Hawkinson has been really good. Hunter Henry has been pretty serviceable in New England. Kelsey missed a game, which hurts his accumulative stats. Kelsey's still the best tight end if we're going talent-wise. But right now, through 4 weeks, if we're going statistical base, it's Sam Laporta, and that extra game does help big time. Receiving yards, he's first. Yards per route run, he's first. Contested catches as a tight end, when you have a linebacker or a safety draped over you, you got to catch those balls. And
6.
He's got 6, which is first out of all tight ends. Tied for second and first downs. Second in yards after catch. Yeah. Receptions, he's third. Sam Laporta has been such a big offensive piece for the Detroit Lions and Jared Goff. He has been behind Amon-Ra St. Brown in the receiving game. He's their number 2 target right now.
Wow. Can I tell you what my first thought was? I mean, you already know it because we talked about it before the show.
Yeah.
What was my first thought when I saw that Sam Laporta was first selection of JM football all team through 4 weeks of the season?
Oh, I wish the Giants had him. No. No. Your reaction was like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think this is like a reflection of the tight end position in football right now.
Yeah.
Even like TJ Hawkinson was made the highest paid tight end recently, over the offseason. And I even said to myself, really? But then it's like, okay, well, he's still good.
Yeah.
He's still good. You can make an argument of, do you want to pay a tight end? Do you not want to pay a tight end? But I think this is just a reflection of where the tight end position is right now in the game of football, where there's like a few good ones.
Yeah.
And then there's just everyone else. Everyone else.
And Laporta early on, it's very shocking how big of an impact he's had in Detroit through the first 4 games of his career. Same thing with Nakua and the Rams. Like it's very impressive, and the stats back it up. It's not like these guys are low and we're bumping up because they're playing for the first time. Like they're leading or top 5, top 3 at their respected positions in the whole league. So good for Sam Laporta.
Let's finish off on the offensive side of the ball with the offensive line. Offensive tackle.
So I will say offensive line is the hardest position in terms of creating this list because that's more of an eye test. Numbers are hard to gather and to spit out and explain because especially if we're going run blocking, like we can talk about good run blockers based on the eye test and watching film and seeing, if we're doing a great job in zone scheme or man scheme and whatnot. But with that said, there are numbers, especially in the passing game, that can also shed some light on offensive line play. So my number 1 offensive tackle, Trent Williams. Niners fans, I will say I did not have him in my pre-season selection. I thought 35 years old, he was going to go off a cliff. Nope, not even close. 0 sacks allowed, 0 hits allowed. Second in both PFF run and pass grading. I know there's some skeptics about the grading. Coaches are evaluating film, so that is something that I do take into account. He's 3rd in pressures allowed with only 3, and his pass blocking efficiency, that's a grade that's really evaluating, all right, how good are we doing? How well are we doing our job? Are we getting our assignments?
It's also the accumulation, like pass blocking efficiency. It's like the accumulation of pressures, hits, sacks allowed, and then also how many pass blocking reps do you actually have?
Exactly, because that's a big difference. Because there's going to be guys who have, especially if you're trailing, you're going to have like 200 reps versus a guy. If you're a run offense like the Atlanta Falcons, you're going to have much less because you're not throwing the ball as much.
Right.
Trent Williams is still that guy. Run game, he's so fun to watch. He's still, at his age, I don't want him.
35 years old,
as an offensive
man.
lineman, right. They're playing in the NFL at over 30 is ridiculous. Playing as an offensive lineman at age 35 and at the caliber of level Trent Williams has played, phenomenal.
It just feels like he's gotten better.
Yeah, and that contract he signed, when he signed that, I believe it was like a 6-year, $120 million deal with San Fran. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're committing a long term. And right now, it's been worth every darn penny. Good.
He hasn't slowed down.
Yeah, he has not slowed down. And right now, at least for this season, I don't foresee him slowing down.
Yeah. Selection number 2 is more interesting. And by the way, I just thought of this.
Yeah.
My guy Andrew Thomas being out, and then also didn't Darrisaw miss some time too for the Vikings?
I love Christian Darrisaw. He was out. Yeah,
and then also from the Houston Texans, you got
Laramie Tunsil,
who's missed some time too. So in a way, I guess it's made the offensive tackle for this JM All team. It's made it a little bit easier. But I will say, a question mark for this next guy was transitioning from right tackle to left tackle. Who was that?
It's Tristan Wirfs from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is something I give credit to because playing right tackle, left tackle, that's a tough transition. And I've talked to former offensive line coaches that I've worked with, and my question is always, when a guy is comfortable at a position, why would a team want to move him to a different spot? Right. And sometimes it's either from right side to left side or from tackle to guard because both of those switches are different as well. Tristan Wirfs is going from the right side to the left side and luckily staying at tackle, and he has not missed a beat, especially in this pass blocking game. Pressures, he's tied for first allowed and fewest with 2. Pass blocking efficiency, tied for first. Sacks allowed 0, hits allowed 0. Pass blocking grade, according to PFF, number 1 of all tackles in the NFL. The run game of the Tampa Bay Bucks is my little concern. That was where I'm like, do I really want to include Wirfs? But he's been very good, and for an offense that has had a great pass game, I think he's a reason keeping Baker Mayfield clean in that pocket and thriving in Tampa Bay.
Not having Tom Brady, by the way, which that Tom Brady
get the ball out.
Tom Brady, didn't give Nate Solder. Tom Brady helped Nate Solder get the biggest offensive line contract all time by the Giants a couple years ago, and he was really bad.
Yeah.
So I was wondering that with Tristan Wirfs is now that Tom Brady is not your quarterback, and Tom Brady has been known to make offensive linemen just look a little, just look better. Now that Tristan Wirfs is moving from the right side to the left side, which I wanted him to do. I wanted him because the left tackle's the second most valuable position in the game of football. Like, if you want to be that first-round pick, if you really want to be recognized as one of the best offensive linemen in the National Football League, play left tackle. Buckle up. And, dude, he's done it.
Yeah.
He has really done it. So credit to Tristan Wirfs. All right, so moving from offensive tackle, let's finish up with the interior, offensive guards, and center. But let's start off with guards. Who do you got, Dalton?
Slam dunk for me, Zach Martin. Perennial Pro Bowler, perennial All-Pro, soon to be Hall of Famer when he retires. He is one of the best offensive linemen I've seen in my
Hall of
lifetime.
Famer, right?
Yeah. Oh, soon to be Hall of Famer. Like, he's probably a top 3 offensive lineman I've seen in my lifetime, for sure. And he might be the best guard. Like, he's up there. But regardless, sacks allowed, hits 0, pressures allowed, tied for 3rd at guard with 3. Run blocking grade from PFF, he's 4th. So he's doing it in both the passing and the run blocking game. And pass blocking efficiency, he's 7th. He's an older guy now out of Notre Dame. I think it was the 2014 draft. The Cowboys almost take Johnny Manziel. At least that's what Jerry Jones wants. Stephen Jones takes Zach Martin instead out of Notre Dame. And he's been a whirlwind at offensive line position. He's been so good. I don't really have much to say on him because that's how good he's been. Yeah. But there's somebody that you want to mention because we're talking about him and how good he's been on the Dallas Cowboys.
Out of namesake alone, if Zach Martin is having a good year, like, he's going to get an all-pro nod.
Yeah.
But Tyler Smith has been really freaking good for the Dallas Cowboys at guard this year. And it's been so fun to see his athleticism that he showed in college at tackle. And it's like, well, he's so raw, he's so messy, and there's a lot of technical stuff to clean up. Maybe this guy can move to guard because of how athletic he is, and also, guard is just inevitably a little bit easier to play than playing tackle. So Tyler Smith has locked in at guard, and you can make an argument that there is, better like Tyler Smith film out there than Zach Martin film, and some of the athleticism stuff that he's been doing. So shout out to Tyler Smith. They have, Zach Martin, of course, the Cowboys, there's always questions about, there's questions about their offensive line for the first time in a decade, and they got, 2 really good guards still rocking and rolling there in Dallas. Now, the second selection I think is interesting. It's Quentin Nelson. First player, I'm going to do an intro of him for you. It's Quentin Nelson. You chose Quentin Nelson. Now, last year, I was pretty surprised to learn, and I didn't really learn this until later in the season when the Giants played the Colts, and I was doing like preview pod notes. The Quentin Nelson and the Colts, like, Quentin Nelson took a step back last year. He was not the same just every year Quentin Nelson's going to be the best offensive lineman in football. Now, you have him back here through 4 weeks. What have you seen from Quentin Nelson that is making you feel confident to put him back on this JM All-Football Team list?
I think one of the things when we're talking about Quentin Nelson this year, like, I'm surprised how well he's playing through injury. Like, he has not been healthy so far this year, and he has still played at a remarkable level. Hasn't allowed a sack so far. He's got the second highest PFF pass blocking grade. He's 5th in pass blocking efficiency, 6th in pressures allowed at the guard position. I think watching Nelson now, this is somebody I've really seen as a Colts fan. Last year to this year, he's moving really well laterally, especially in the pass blocking game.
Yeah.
So that is something that's really huge. But offensive line as a position, there's 5 guys. You're playing different positions, but it's a position that you have to play together.
Yeah.
Because if someone makes a mistake, it highlights the whole offensive line making an issue. Like, you're allowing a sack or a pressure, like, it hurts your quarterback. The offensive line is the motor of that offense. What Nelson's done a really good job, especially with Ryan Kelly at center being out on stunts and blitzes, like, he's done a great job calling things out pre-snap and during the play. He does a great job, especially when it was Bernard Ryman at left tackle, making switches and making sure that we're picking up our proper assignments. And in the run game, that's where he usually made his bread and butter. Last year, he had struggled because he didn't have that same lower half drive due to injuries. This year, we're seeing guys like Zach Moss play really well, and that's in large part because of how good Quentin Nelson has been. The one thing I want to point out is that his run blocking grade is still mid, and that's, I think, more of an overall issue with the Colts right now rather than Quentin Nelson.
Yeah.
But with the eye test, Quentin Nelson looks as close to 2019, 2018 form than he has since then.
That's awesome. Let's finish it off with center.
Another former Dallas Cowboy, but now Miami Dolphin. Connor Williams, 2nd year with the Dolphins. Connor Williams, this is another shocking one. Jason Kelsey or Frank Ragnow could have been selected. I went with Connor Williams because he's basically first in everything. And watching the Dolphins offense, they've allowed, going into last week versus Buffalo, they had allowed 1 sacked. And that again contributed to the entire offensive line. But Connor Williams has done a great job leading that charge at the center position. He's had 1 pressure allowed, by far the best in the NFL so far. Pass blocking efficiency, almost 100, which we never see. No sacks, no hits allowed. And he's top 3 in center for pass blocking and run blocking grade from PFF. The only center to be top 5, and he's top 3 in both. Connor Williams has done a fantastic job. He was an athletic guy coming out of Texas. Injuries had slowed him. He had gotten benched with Dallas. Last year, he played all 17 games for Miami. Comes into this year, and this is the best he's looked in his entire career.
Yeah.
Very shocking, and a special shout out to him for how well he's helped make that offense in Miami go.
Yeah, and Miami's run game has taken a huge step up this year too, and they've been really searching for consistent offensive line play for a couple years in Miami, and Connor Williams being a center, being the anchor, being the captain of that offensive line, helping them keep that train moving. Dalton Feely, we're going to break this up into 2 videos. So this video was your JM football all-team for the offensive side of the ball. Next video is going to be the defense. So if you like the video, please please subscribe, please comment, let us know what players you would include, what players you wouldn't include. We'll see you next time for the defense. Peace.